CAT meeting. It is 6:30. Shall we have roll call, please?
Tiffany Grimsley.
Present.
Cameron Sasai. Maureen Tom.
Here.
Jerry Parsons.
Present.
Tom Hanson.
Here? All right, shall we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? All right, would anybody like to move to approve the agenda?
I'll move approval.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you. Are there any public communications?
No.
All right, perfect. All right, consent calendar. Anybody interested in the consent calendar? Pull anything, any questions or make a motion?
I make a motion to approve the consent calendar as is.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second on the consent calendar. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone
Aye.
opposed? Anyone like to abstain? All right, thank you. That brings us to items for board discussion. 2.1, update on bus wash repair.
Thank you. So there is a staff report in the packet. I did mention at the end of the last meeting that we did have a issue with our bus wash that we were going to start working on. As expected, when we got the quote back from the plumber, it was above my authority, so I did work with Chair Hanson. There's an email attached where we just kind of confirmed that I would have authority to move ahead as quickly as possible to start the work. The work has started. There's been some issues in finding the pipe. The plans that we were left by the actual people who built the bus wash didn't quite match didn't quite match where the pipe actually is. So we've done a little bit of work on that, and we're starting to actually figure out how to run the pipe, connect it, and then hopefully have the bus wash back up and running in the next couple of weeks. I think the one item I did look at when we went through this process, we do have something in our procurement policies that say I do have the ability to go above my authorised authority in the case of emergency, which I think this justifiably was, and that we're trying to get this bus wash up and running as quickly as we could. But I think I do want to change the language going forward, just to add that I would do so in consultation with the board chair at the time. And then we would then report out as we are at the next board meeting, just as to what occurred and where we are in the process. So happy to answer any questions, but other than that, this is more just an information kind of item.
Any questions on the bus wash repair?
I have a question. Are we at risk of any stormwater violations?
No, right now all the water is turned off. All the issues were resolved, so this shouldn't have eaten that.
We're also not affecting the drainage at all. It's just rerouting the water feed.
Thank you.
All right. Please.
At this time, is there any estimated amount of time for the repairs to occur?
We're looking at probably at this point, assuming we don't run into any more weird problems, we're looking at probably right around 4 weeks to completion and having it functional again.
Thank you.
All right. And during their work, did they figure out what the problem was, or just it's under the slab somewhere and they're just rerouting?
Yeah, we're just rerouting. The amount of cement and rebar that would have to be torn up to find the actual damage to identify and repair would just be counterproductive at this point.
Okay, thank you. All right, so that was just information, so let's...
Do you need direction?
I think you've given, the direction is just to continue with the work, I think, at this, and then I will make that change to the procurement manual that will go into effect as soon as I put that into place.
All right, that brings us to 2.2, authorize the general manager to enter into agreement with Ronnie Kraft Consulting to undertake a comprehensive operational analysis. Mr. General Manager.
Thank you. So again, this was an item I did kind of bring up a little bit towards the end of the last board meeting, but I think it goes back a little bit further than that, to when we actually passed the the current budget for the year back in May when we brought that to the board. You know, at that time we did discuss that we were using some of our reserve funds to balance our budget for the upcoming year. And I think a number of the board members expressed a desire to come up with some kind of board workshop going forward, so we could kind of look a little bit deeper into that, look a little bit deeper into the service that we have out on the street. And as I kind of started to think that through, of what that might look like, and speaking to other general managers, other staff from other agencies, it was clear that we needed a little bit more than just a board workshop. You know, we needed to actually spend some time, bring someone in from the outside to help us look at our service levels as we operate them now, our anticipated funding that we may get in the next few years. And then, you know, we haven't actually changed the way our routes, our structure of the service has been operated in over 30 years. You know, our basic fixed route service was set up in the 90s. We have added service. You know, we've added the service to Del Norte Bar. We added the service to the college. We added the service into San Francisco. But we've never done like a really deep dive of what the community needs from us, from the transit service that we provide. So again, in just thinking this through, it just became a lot clearer that we need to do a lot more work on this. We don't have the capabilities in-house to do this kind of work, so we are looking at an outside consultant to come in and help us out, provide some of this work, go through some of this. So I've worked with this consultant over the last couple of weeks to put together the scope of work that's included in the packet, and I think, you know, we haven't actually finalised it, you know, the entire work, but it does involve her presenting to the board on at least 4 occasions, 2 community workshops. There's an extensive amount of community engagements, community outreach, survey work. Again, we haven't done a survey of our riders or our potential riders in probably 10 years at this point. So these are all just things that we haven't done in a long time that I think is long overdue. You know, most transit agencies of any size go through this kind of process of a comprehensive operations analysis maybe every 10, 15 years, if not more often. Again, we have not done one, so I think it's just timely that we need to go through this work. I think it's also worth noting that, you know, over the last, since the pandemic, a number of agencies have gone through this work and radically altered how they provide service. You know, Tridelta went through a similar process and have come up with their Try My Ride, which is a very microtransit oriented work. I know the City of Fairfield reevaluated their entire service through a similar plan. LAVTA have done the same. You know, AC Transit are doing their Realign project right now. So I think one of the things that's, you know, coming out of the pandemic, you know, our ridership has changed, our levels of service may need to change. So I think this study will just help us get a good idea of where the board needs to take the agency over the upcoming years in terms of service levels, you know, who we're trying to service, you know. And I did mention to a couple of directors today, it could be that we come out of it and they say, no, it's great, keep it as it is. I don't anticipate that, but, you know, I think it's just it's a time just to evaluate what we've got out there on the street and really kind of delve into some of the details. I think the real important element is going to be involving the community. You know, I think we're more than happy to come and present to the city councils, to WICTAC, to other, you know, make sure we're more involved in community events over the next year, asking for this kind of input and this feedback so we can really understand what the needs of the community are, what transit should look like, because, you know, we do operate a lot of service into San Francisco, we do operate a lot of service into Del Norte Bart, but we don't have huge ridership on those routes right now. So, you know, is there a need for areas of Hercules and Panola that aren't currently served to be served? You know, there's the waterfront, which is no service in Hercules. There's large areas of Panola and unincorporated areas of the county where we used to have service, where we don't have service currently. We've had a meeting with the vice principal of the Panola Middle School where we don't have service. So, you know, and he was asking about, he gave us a map of where the current student population kind of are coming from, and we don't have service in those areas. So I think it's just the time to really get into this and really look at how our service looks throughout the entire community. The final thing I'll say is, there's a lot of detail in the scope of work which we'll refine. There's additional marketing work towards the end, which I think will be important. That we need to have a marketing plan of how we're going to promote this service at the end of the day. So this is a fairly substantial amount of funding that we're asking for this project. I will say it's a lot less funding than other agencies are paying for similar studies. We're a smaller agency, obviously, so what I'm comfortable with the amount of time the consultants proposing on these individual scopes of work. Our staff are going to be working closely with them, certainly in analysing a lot of the data. We've already started some of that work. So I think it's a really timely point for us to be doing this. And again, there's a lot of talk in the region of consolidation. There's a lot of talk in the region of how we're going to go forward if funding doesn't come back. This gets us in a good place to say, here's our plan of how we're going to move forward, given the funding we anticipate over the next few years. It's a right sizing of the agency in some senses of where we currently are. So happy to answer any questions, but we are looking for authorization to move forward with finalizing and going ahead with this project.
And where was the funding coming from?
So that's it. Thanks, Tom. So we would actually be, we didn't budget for this in our current budget, so we would be using a small amount of our reserve funding. So it would be $180,000 out of our reserves. So we will go through that process to make sure that those funds were allocated for this project.
So are there any questions? Jerry, did you?
Mine is just a comment. I think this is a really excellent next step, an opportunity to gain an assessment of where our conditions are right now and engage the community, get the community voice involved. And then, having regular check-ins as this process is moving forward with the consultant, and then reporting out later, and having the data at hand for whether it's a future conversation about, with other agencies or about what's going to happen with regard to consolidation, but just having, the up-to-date data on our services, the areas that are impacted, the communities that are impacted, and I think it's just a wonderful next step. I would like to ask if you could speak to how you selected this particular consulting agency.
Sure. So I did have a couple of conversations with some of the larger consulting firms, and actually reached around to other agencies to ask if they had any recommendations for people who could do this kind of work. And, in speaking with the larger consulting agencies and having worked with a number of those staff who all do great work, I really felt that this was a project that needed a fine touch of the right consultant to do this work. I don't want to come back to the board with something that's taken off the shelf, that's been produced for 10 other agencies of our size. It needed to be someone that would come in, understand what the communities, understand the demographics, do the work on the the census analysis of kind of who's out there. And just to speak to your point on data, I think we're also at a point now where we actually have data that is available and usable to us. Finn, the planner, has been going through and actually finally looking at some of the data we've had for a number of years, so we're in a position to do that. But the consultant it was a process of, it wasn't a formal process, didn't go out to bid, but it was conversations with 2 or 3 of the consultant firms out there, and just trying to find the right person that was the right fit for this particular project.
Yeah, thanks for that report. I understand from a couple of council members in the city of Richmond that they're looking at preparing an RFP to study microtransit. And I just wanted you to be aware of that, and so that if they end up going through a contract, that we're sort of talking from the same issues, because they, the conversations that I've had was requesting that other West County jurisdictions might be interested, but I understand they have not gone through WCTAC to coordinate that. So just be aware of it.
Yeah, I mean, I am aware of the City of Richmond's current situation with their services. So that will be somewhat incorporated into this work.
Thank you. The service area that's being looked at, is it also in this study going to look at potential expansion? Like many years ago, there was a bus, it was a Vallejo bus that would come through Hercules and then on to Vallejo. And that's, I don't know, obviously it wasn't effective because it never came back, but it is definitely something that, I would love to see looked at as far as our service area and how we might be able to benefit some other unserved areas or areas that maybe AC Transit has, not really want to frame it this way, but abandoned, where we might actually be able to service those customers. And there was a time when, a long time ago, where there was this talk about, well, that's AC Transit's area. So then at WIC I would talk to the AC Transit person or whomever else, the board director, the staff person, and now we have a bus to San Francisco. That was a BART thing too. The bus to Contra Costa College, that was another thing that we advocated for. Oh, well, but that's AC Transit, and we connect up at Hilltop Mall. And I go, yeah, but have you ever taken that? Because I have. And it takes a really long time. And by the time you get to school, you're already just mentally drained by being on a bus and transferring all around. And anyways, long story short, my question is, can we please, if it's not in here, make sure that we look at expansion and how we partner like we did in these other situations where we were able to get to Contra Costa College. One of my hopes being back on this board is that we somehow figure out a way with an amazing connection or a direct link to Diablo Valley College, because that is a student population that I think that we're not serving, that we could be serving better in getting students to DVC, because we service Contra Costa College and DVC. And
I think the short answer is yes. I was going into a bit more detail, but yeah, I think that the plan is to look at some of those areas. Obviously, the remit of this board is to serve the residents of this service area. So we've got to understand that balance as well. But we will be looking at origin destination work. I mean, a lot of that work's been done by other consultants with other projects, so we'll be using that data. But immediately I think of the Richmond Ferry has potential of an area to serve. The Vallejo is it's a somewhat ongoing conversation we have with Soltrans about how to make that connection. So I think we would keep that in part of the mix. And I think to your bigger point, I think the concerns that other agencies used to have about being territorial about their boundaries are not so much the case anymore. I'm not saying they're not still there in the background, but it's not like it was even 5-6 years ago. I think there's a lot more flexibility and be able to make those correct decisions on where you actually need to operate service. And we've always had a very fluid boundary with AC Transit, because technically Richmond Parkway is the end of our service area. So but we go past there, and the college is the perfect example. There's a reason why there were no stops established between Richmond Parkway and the college, because we weren't allowed to at that time. I mean, that was the basic, the agreement was you can go to the college and that's it. I think that times have changed, times have moved on. So I think all of that will be part of what we look at. I think when we did the schedule and when we do this again, we will also work with people like, we did work with County Connection about the potential connection out to the DVC. And it's difficult, but I think once we start having those conversations, we can start working to make sure that we coordinate our schedules to do so, and then keep that in place, going down the road.
It promotes ridership, is my perception, and the ridership experience. And the better the ridership experience, the more. I think the more odds are that we'll have more people on the buses, hopefully. And in this study, obviously this has changed since the pandemic with ridership. There's a lot of people that have actually gone back to work, but there's a lot of people that are still working from home. And how these agencies work together, hopefully there is like you said, this better cohesiveness amongst the agencies to just focus on the rider versus the territorial boundary. I even have that when it comes to the school boundaries too. Separate issue.
You know, I'll just be on the record to say this is a great initiative. Thank you for leading on this. I think operational analysis is really needed. I reiterate what you all said as well as other directors as we think about what I'm hearing is just really strategic coordination with other agencies, whether it's our community college district. Of course, I hear other cities as well, and included in that, I just want to add, of course, the East Bay Regional Parks District as well, and thinking about how some of our residents access our local parks, but also our parks that are not so local that still are a benefit to our space. So just making sure as we, I'm fully supportive of this initiative, but as we think about our strategic coordination, thinking about all the agencies around our area and how our residents engage with them, I think would be a good flag for it. But thank you.
Are there any other questions? Anybody like to make a motion?
I move approval.
And I will second.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
Do we need check in on public comment?
Oh, public, do we need public comment for that? There's, doesn't look like we had any.
I don't think they showed up this time.
They're coming soon. There are people watching at home, though. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone like to abstain? All right, thank you. So that brings us to 2.3, consideration of approval of Amendment 3 to the Agreement of Public Transport Services between WICTAC and MV Transportation to establish a new fixed monthly rate. Mr. General Manager.
Thank you. So this is it's not a huge dollar amount, this amendment that we're looking at, but I think it's an important amendment that we're looking at. There's two elements to this. First is just to bring another slight increase to our maintenance wages, the salaries for the maintenance workers. The last two amendments that we've brought to the board, the first amendment was a lot to do with the drivers' wages, which was, a union contract. But based on the changes that were made then, the second amendment did mean that we did slightly increase the wages for the road supervisors and the dispatchers. So I think the maintenance staff were the kind of the final element of the on-site staff that needed to be recognised as for the work that they're currently doing. They have, I think we've mentioned a number of times in the last couple of years that they've really stepped up. They've taken on bigger, larger projects and kind of really got into keeping our vehicles out on the street. So there is a salary increase that's included in this, and then I think the other element is, when we bid this, or when this contract went out to bid in 2020, we had the structure for the maintenance staff as being 3 A-level mechanics, 2 B-level mechanics, and 1 C-level mechanic. Pretty much, other than the C-level mechanic, all of the others have been with the agency for up to 10 years at this point. The C-level mechanic has been here a couple of years now, and I think in recognition of the work that the C-level mechanic is doing, and then one of the B-level mechanic has been really stepped up and has been doing A-level work for the last couple of years. So the structure of the contract is that we do have a fixed cost structure in place that would go into effect to make those changes. So we are proposing to move one of the B mechanics to an A mechanic and the C mechanic to a B mechanic. So that's kind of all written into the structure. So that I think it works out to around a $3,500 cost per month overall. So it's not a huge amount. It's a 1.1% increase in our fixed monthly cost that we pay for the contract. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Would like to ask a question? No. Would like to make a motion?
Maybe I'll ask a question.
All right, Jerry.
Is it enough?
Yes. I mean, I think we went out and we did a lot of comparison of what other agencies are paying. The short answer is yes. Without getting into too much detail about it, we feel it is. I think the mechanics are pleased with what they've been presented with, and they've expressed, I'd say a lot of them have been here 10, 12, up to 15 years. So, your question is valid. The retention is very important. So I feel it gets them very much in line with some of the larger agencies in the area. That's just, so it puts us in a pretty good place with the maintenance stuff.
Thank you.
One thing to consider when you redo MV or redo the contract with whoever the next provider is maybe instead of locking in A's and B's, it's certain things get them to A, and there could all be A's, so you don't have somebody that's just trapped in that position just because there's so many A's and so many B's.
I've learned a lot in the last couple of years about how the structure of the next RFP will be in terms of a number of items, of how certain positions and salaries shouldn't be tied to other positions, and it's got this.
Yeah, you trap people.
Yes,
you
is
drive
the
them out.
point is yes.
Right, so would anyone like to make a motion to approve?
I'll move approval.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any public comment? No? All right, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone
Aye.
opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you. All right, that brings us to 2.4, and that's discussion on the participation in the California Clean Air Day free transit rides.
Thank you. So in your packet, there is a letter that we received from John Joyer and Jim Wunderman about the California Clean Air Day, which is on October 2nd of this year. So they wrote to all the transit agencies asking them to participate. A number of the small operators have met and in principle agreed that we would like to participate in this to provide free transit fares on this particular day. All of the small operators that do will plan to do some kind of joint marketing and joint promotion for this. So we're not just doing it kind of all alone. We're trying to get as many agencies involved as we can. It does look like it's going to be confined to the small agencies. I don't believe the large agencies are planning to participate for various reasons. But I think it seems to be a good incentive, a good opportunity to try and encourage ridership. And I think if it's done throughout the Bay Area, even if it's just the small operators, I think just getting that level of marketing and promotion involved would be very beneficial. We don't anticipate this to be a huge financial burden to the agency. We're looking at probably $7,000-8,000 that would be a cost, and we do have funding that's already in place from the low carbon transit funds, the LC top funds. We have a number of funds from previous years where we did plan on offering free rides for various lengths of time, and it was kind of through the pandemic, so it never kind of quite worked out as to when to do it. So the funding would be covered for this particular day. So again, we are just looking for direction to participate in this, and then work with the other small operators to kind of promote it and come up with a marketing plan.
Would you like to ask a question? In the past, before the pandemic, we actually saw like Spare the Air days when it was a free ride. Ridership actually went up pretty good. Are we still expecting that increase, or is it kind of still unknown in this new world?
Yeah, I don't think back many years ago when the Air District actually used to provide funding for us to offer this, yes, we used to see crazy increases. You used to get full buses on these days when you operated it, but we don't see that level now. I think we may anticipate between 10-15% increase, depending on how it's publicised it is, and then what the weather's like on that particular day. It always makes a difference. A really hot day, it can make a difference. I think when the ferries have offered opportunities like this, the ferries see packed boats when they do that. The bus operators just not so much anymore. I think it's still a great incentive to try and encourage that ridership, but it's not that. We're not going to need to borrow buses from elsewhere to quell the ridership demands.
So for the direction of staff, would you like a motion to?
Sure, yeah.
I'll move that we participate in offering free fares in support of California Clean Air Day, October 2nd, 2024.
I'll second that.
Is there any public comment? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone like to abstain? All right, thank you. That takes care of the action items. Now we'll go to committee reports. The general manager report, 3.1.
Thank you. So I just have 2 items. First one is introduction of our new staff member in the audience there. Christina Lofty, who has joined our accounting team. So she's working with Yvonne and Deborah. She's been here 2 or 3 weeks at this point. So her and Deborah deep into kind of training and going through all the process. So I just wanted to introduce her to the board. And then the second item is just to follow up on the suggestion that Director Sasai kind of approached me with, but I think it also came up in general conversation at the board meeting last week about inviting Congressman Garamendi to some kind of event. So I've actually got a request of the board because I've reached out a number of times. I've got the generic response back, and I've been given different emails to try. So if anyone on the board has a particularly good contact at the Congressman's office, if they wouldn't mind copying me on an email, that would kind of just try to see if we can get that ball rolling, so we could kind of try and organise something with the staff. So that's all I had for this evening.
All right. Thank you. So that brings us to 3.2 WIC TAC report. I wasn't able to make it. Jerry, were you able to make that one?
Anytime you can't make it, just give me a text.
Okay.
I'm sorry, because
So-
I would have definitely made it.
So I think that's an item that we need to bring to the board
Okay.
next meeting
get him
to
a-
make to Jerry
the
the official.
okay.
You could certainly attend, but you wouldn't be in an official capacity. I reached out to John this week, and I thought I could just appoint you, but apparently the board needs to go through that process. So we will do that at the next board meeting.
We'll get him his official blessing.
Yes.
All right, so that brings us to 4.0 correspondence. Do we have any correspondence? All right. Do we have any board communications or items for further board meetings? Jerry?
I mean, I could do this offline, but I can ask it online. In the past, when I was on this board, I attended a couple different conferences. Is anybody doing that kind of stuff anymore? Because sometimes some of the stuff that we're learning about, be it service area, contracts, consultants, that kind of stuff. And I think we saw each other once, I think, Maureen, at a Revolution, if I'm not mistaken.
Revolution, yeah.
Yeah, and so I would be interested in attending those like at least once a year, maybe, I don't know, once every other year, something. I don't know what the budget is these days for that kind of stuff, but I learned a lot, and that's kind of part of the piece of the puzzle that helped me advocate for some of the stuff in the past.
All right, Devin?
Well, I'll say I'm booked on conferences this fall. There's a lot happening, as you can imagine, but there is the California Transit Association Conference, I believe on November 20th. For those of us who are council members, of course, we have the National League of Cities Conference as well. That overlaps with that, unfortunately, this year, so that would be a choice to make, but certainly encourage one of those two. And of course, the California League of Cities Conference is always a good one to talk about multiple issues, but I serve on the policy committee for, it actually has, probably should be split up, but it's transportation, public works, and communications. And it has oftentimes a issue salience of transit and transportation issues as well. But happy to send those over to Mr. Thompson if you want me to, if you can share those with the rest of the board.
Yeah, that's no problem.
Has anybody been doing that for this board anymore, or no?
No. I mean, it's been quite a while since any of the board members have been to either CALACT, California Transit Association, or any of those. So it's been quite a while.
Okay.
Yeah, we can look to see where Revolution and some of the other conferences are, because when they're, in this area, it's much cheaper.
Yeah,
Yeah.
practice.
Yeah. And if it makes sense,
Yeah.
if it makes sense, and if the programming is appropriate and all that, I don't want to just willy-nilly go somewhere. I really feel that in the past, it's been a long time though, it was extremely valuable. That's what I think, anyways.
Any other board communication? All right. Shall we move to adjournment then?
Oh, please.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you again soon. That'll be on September 12th. See you then.